Hello and welcome to IP Workshop Live. I'm your host, Ryan, and today we're joined by Emma Rose Cohen, founder and CEO of Final. Welcome.
Hi, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining. Can we just start by getting an overview of who you are?
Sure. So I founded and created the Final Company, and we make products that focus on reducing single-use plastic. So I went to school in Santa Barbara. It's an amazing, beautiful campus right on the beach. And I kind of just was watching all this plastic waste get created. A lot of it would end up on the beaches, and then was having these really intense moments of realization around like, oh wow, once it ends up on the beach, it's going in the ocean, and that's affecting, the entire marine ecosystem. And so I started focusing on straws because they seemed like kind of the lowest fruit on the tree, the easiest thing to potentially replace. For most people, and I caveat that because some people do need straws, but for most people, a straw is a luxury. And so why not design a beautiful, luxurious product to replace a single-use one that you can keep with you forever? From there, the brand has developed into additional products that do just that, help people reduce their plastic waste.
Yeah, fantastic. I think it's a really admirable cause. I think we've seen a huge drop in the use of single-use, at least straws, in the past few years. And yeah, I think Final's had at least something to do with that, which is very positive.
Thank you.
It's definitely something that resonates with people. You started off on Kickstarter, am I right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Could you talk me through a bit about the campaign on Kickstarter and how this sort of led to getting the attention of counterfeiters?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically came up with this concept of a collapsible straw that fits in a case because nothing like it existed. When I looked to see if I could find some sort of travel straw, the only ones that existed were steel straws or glass straws. And I wanted something that was a little more portable. So basically worked with some people to create and sorry, and in the concept and created some prototypes. So worked with a CAD developer and was able to make something that was 3D printed, and then created the entire campaign and launched it on Kickstarter. And mind you, I was creating this campaign in my kitchen in Whistler, British Columbia, eating ramen, like, completely broke. This was just, it was a work of love and passion because I just believed in the idea. I believed in the product, and people really resonated with it. And within 36 hours, we'd raised $200,000. And by the end of the campaign, we'd raised 1.89 million.
How did you feel when you saw these numbers?
I mean, it was surreal. Like, it was the craziest thing that's ever happened to me. Like, it just didn't, yeah, the numbers just kept going up and up and up. And it was just so wild. And I would just like cry all the time because it was like this thing that I really cared about. And to see that, like, oh, wow, other people do care. We just need to provide the solutions. Like, people want to do the right thing. They just don't necessarily have the solutions. But, that the excitement was very quickly like overwhelmed by the amount of work that had to be done because I was working 18-hour days, 7 days a week, minimum. I was, waking up in the middle of the night to thousands of emails. It was so overwhelming. And it was just me and one other person working on this. And we were just getting inundated with, messages and requests and so much excitement, which was amazing, but also like an insane amount of work. So immediately had to, scramble. I hired my cousin. I hired like anyone I could find that could help. And yeah, it was incredible. It was really a very exciting time.
Yeah, great to have this much support, but
Yeah.
I think I'd feel equally stressed if I were waking up to thousands of emails every
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
Um, so was it from the Kickstarter campaign that you started noticing fake versions of the straw, or later?
Yeah. So basically, there's a lot of companies in China that are just watching Kickstarter. They're watching to see products that are really popular and basically will take the design concept from the Kickstarter page and knock it off and make counterfeit products. So, it was in my wildest dreams of all the things that could go wrong. This is not something I envisioned or that I like saw happening. I did there was one other Kickstarter campaign before us that had gotten knocked off really badly. It was the fidget spinners.
Mm.
And so oh wait, no. It was it wasn't the fidget spinner, but it was called the fidget cube. And so
Oh,
yeah, once we started getting really knocked off, I actually reached out to those guys and was like, hey, this is happening to us. But, the first thing that happened was that someone, took all of our marketing material and then made a website and started selling the product. And we were like, first of all, we didn't even have a product. We had prototypes that were, completely handmade and not something that you could sell to the public. There was like orthodontic rubber bands on them. And it was like, each straw took us about an hour and a half to fully assemble everything. So, it was certainly not something that we were planning on, selling to the public. We were raising the funds so that we could get the machinery and the tooling that we needed. But yeah, so this popped up and we were like, oh, this is so weird. And, kind of started going through some channels, getting it taken down, got it taken down. And then 2 days later, there was like 10 websites. And then, 3 days after that, there was like 200. And it was just unbelievable how quickly it spread, because basically what happened is that these Chinese companies, they can jump on creating tooling, in a heartbeat. And so within, a week or two, they had made all of the tooling based on our prototype. And so, which was a pretty simple design. Like, and so all of a sudden we have customers, thousands, and I'm not even exaggerating, of emails of people saying that we're trying to rip them off because they found these other websites that are selling them for $10 and, we are selling them for 20. And that, but they have all of our materials, they have all of our photos. So obviously it's us trying to make extra money on the side. And so that became a nightmare, and trying to communicate about why there was all these other websites and, they were putting all of this money into marketing and advertising. We had put, up until like launching the Kickstarter, we put a couple $1,000s into marketing, but through the whole Kickstarter campaign, we did not put any money into marketing. And so it was so horrible. And then once people started getting the products, that's when a whole other level of nightmare started, because the products were incredibly low quality and we were getting blamed for that. And, the whole purpose of the product is to replace single-use plastic, is to reduce impact and waste. And all of a sudden we inadvertently we hadn't created these products, but because of our idea, all of these products have been created that were now creating a lot more waste.
Yeah, the demand for your eco-friendly product sort of led to somebody else providing a supply of yet more single-use plastics, essentially.
Right. And tarnishing our brand name and, creating a ton of customer confusion. The number of people who were just shocked and appalled that we were selling this product, on Amazon and all these other places when the Kickstarter wasn't even over. And we were like, it's not us. And people were like, well, it has your face on it. And it's like, yeah, I know they took those photos, but like trying to communicate that to, 30,000 people who are on our Kickstarter base was really challenging.
So how did you go about trying to address this feedback from your fans all at once? Because there's no way you can go through thousands of social media messages or reply to everybody.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that was where like hiring really came in. We were trying to hire people as quickly as possible, bringing in friends and family. I had never run a business before. I'd never hired people before. My background at that point was I'd worked in sustainability. I was working at Los Alamos National Laboratory in their waste minimization department, and also doing my master's in sustainability at Harvard. And so, up until that point, it was like a lot of theory, but not a lot of application. So I really got to learn a lot of things the hard way and make a ton of mistakes. I think that, the number of mistakes that I've made, in the first couple of years of creating Final was huge, because I just had no clue what I was doing, and was looking everywhere I could for support and guidance. But yes, the best way that we were able to address the concerns was through emails. We were sending mass emails out to the Kickstarter backers, through social media posts. But you like post something on social media saying, hey, these are knockoffs, they're not us. And people will say like, well, isn't, copying the best form of flattery? And it's like, yeah, the only people who say that have never had something ripped off of theirs, because it wasn't just the concept people were ripping off. It was pictures of me. It was pictures that we'd taken. It was all of our material. So it was way beyond just taking the concept.
So you never felt a feeling of flattery when you started seeing fakes popping up? You never thought, oh, my idea is so good, other people want to make it? It was negative from the outset.
No, yeah. I mean, like, I think anyone who's been ripped off like this, there's not a feeling of flattery. It's not, because I think a feeling of flattery comes when someone takes something that you've done and takes inspiration from that to create something else, with their spin and their ideas infused in it. And that is incredibly flattering. I mean, now you go on Amazon and you Google travel straw, there's a bunch of different options. Before, there was literally nothing. Is that flattering? Absolutely. I love that people are taking, what I'm working on and iterating on it, trying to make it better, trying to make it their own. And I think that's amazing. That's what, inspiration is all about. But when you're just straight taking, it felt like someone was coming into my house and stealing like personal objects from me every day. I mean, it was just the most, it was such a horrible feeling. It really felt like very personal and very, like a violation.
So what would you say were your first steps in really trying to combat the actual fakes popping up beyond trying to communicate to your fans?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, first steps were definitely like get a hold of the fidget cube people and just be like, hey, what is happening? Like, what do we do? And so they were really helpful in giving us some steps that they had taken, which was basically like working with these companies. I believe the first one was called Red Dot, that we worked with, and they basically are using computer programs to search for, and this is entirely based on copyright. Time of our Kickstarter launching, we had a provisional patent, but we did not have, our patent had not been granted yet. So if you are out there and you're thinking about launching a Kickstarter and you're like, well, do I wait for my patent to get granted? I think that is a very complicated choice, because first of all, getting a patent is very expensive. To just get a utility and design patent is about $10,000, unless you're amazing like Sarah Blakely and can write your own. That's the founder of Sphinx. And so, we're waiting for our provisional to go through. And so we can enforce on copyrights, which are very easy and quick to get. So that's any, photos that you're putting online, and then also trademarks. So I would say, to those people out there that are thinking about launching a Kickstarter and wondering what IP they need to have before the Kickstarter launches, I would say try and wait till you have a trademark, because that way you can enforce on the name, because people were stealing our name and they were calling things, FinalStraw with 2 W's, or FinalStrawStore.com, or, myfinalstraw.com. And when you have a trademark, you can start enforcing on people who are stealing that intellectual property, which is the name and the logo. So as we were waiting for the patent to go through, we were only able to enforce on copyright. So anyone who was using our photos, our imagery, and which was everyone. I mean, they took, for the packaging that they were using for the straws, they took a photo that we had taken. So if we were able to prove that, it was relatively easy to get it taken down, but we pretty quickly had to hire companies. Now, also financing all of this is a challenge. And so with Kickstarter, you don't get all the money until the campaign's over. So we had a month of like trying to figure out how to enforce, and which might not sound like a long time, but in that month, we had thousands of knockoffs. So it was like your house is infested with, cockroaches, and you can't do anything for a month besides hit them one at a time. It was unbelievable. But anyways, once we got the money, we were able to bring on a bigger legal team to help us. From there, it is a bit of a waiting game, because you're just waiting for the patent to go through. You're waiting for the trademark to go through. And then once those went through, you start enforcing. And it's incredibly expensive. Our legal bill was astronomical, and we did recoup some of the funds through lawsuits, but not even close to what we spent.
Yeah, legal teams can be absolutely fantastic with helping with your strategy, helping with the actual applications of your IP, but the actual chunk of work of brand protection so often is just finding, reporting, checking, finding, reporting. It's not really a task built for well-educated professional lawyers. It's just
right
too much of a cost per hour for most brands.
Right. Yeah, and you can do DNC requests. Shopify was really amenable. If they were the ones hosting the website, we would say like, hey, this website is copying us. And they would actually take it down pretty quickly. We also were able to work directly with Amazon to start getting some of the fakes taken down. And so that was incredibly helpful.
Did you feel like you built a relationship with the representatives from Shopify and Amazon?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think both platforms, especially Amazon, has in the last couple of years really taken the issue of IP and counterfeiting very seriously. This isn't Amazon of 10 or so years ago. I think small brands who are finding fakes on Amazon can trust that they will at least be on their side in the fight.
Yeah, I'm in no way like promoting Amazon as a good company, because I don't believe that, but I do believe that they do their best to protect brands who are getting knocked off. And I know that I experienced it. We were actually part of their pilot program for brand protection. And so it was really amazing to see, this multi-billion-dollar company help us, this like tiny little, company selling reusable straws. And so that was one thing that warmed my heart a little bit when it comes to Amazon, but it's not enough.
Sure. I mean, within the confines of the webinar, we can be focused on their brand protection efforts, but yeah, there are areas of improvement. So what would you say was a turning point for Final in the battle against counterfeits? Excuse me.
That's a good question. So, once these Chinese companies realize that you are enforcing, the speed at which they kind of continue to replicate the same thing over and over, because at first you do a takedown and then 3 more pop up, and they're just kind of like, cool, like catch us if you can. But then once they start to realize that you're actually like, you have an enforcement strategy in place and that you have legal behind you, they do start to slow down. Once we got our GEO, which is a general exclusion order, and it's basically the patent office saying this patent is valid and this patent is enforceable, then we really started seeing a massive slowdown of counterfeits because they would get seized at the border. And so technically, once you get a GEO, any import of a counterfeit is subject to getting seized. And so then they're going to just start losing a ton of money if they're bringing in products.
Did you work with the Customs and Border Patrol? You're based in the United States currently. You're from Canada originally,
Yeah.
right? So were you working with
No, I was just living in Canada.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So were you working with Customs and Border Patrol in the States to actually inform them of what to look for?
Yep. So you get the GEO, and then you basically work with Customs and Border Patrol to show them what the fakes look like, what the real thing looks like, how to discern between the two, which wasn't very hard. I mean, the fakes did not look like the real FinalStraw. They based their design from our Kickstarter campaign, which was our prototype. And from prototype to actual product was a very long journey where we did quite a few different iterations of the design and finally came up with what was FinalStraw version 1, and then which then turned into FinalStraw version 2. But yes, we did work directly with Customs and Border Patrol.
Yeah, I think it's often a little known fact that brands can actually work directly with them, and I think very often either CBP or whatever relevant customs agency is in whichever country you're based in, they are very often dying to have brands submit this information because they want to be a part of stopping the counterfeits coming in.
Totally.
Have you been able to work with any other organizations or like government agencies as part of your brand protection?
Well, not so much government agencies, but we did, once we got our GEO, then eBay would pay attention to us. But eBay was very challenging to work with, which was really frustrating because there's just so many knockoffs on eBay, still are, and that was just, it was not like Amazon where we had a designated person we could talk to, and we kind of just got pushed around a ton. And then once we got the GEO, which is a really big deal in the patent world to get a GEO, then eBay kind of started to listen, but it was still like pulling teeth.
So it was about trying to get them to trust that when you say this is counterfeit, that they would actually believe you.
Right. So, I mean, they have so many things they have to take into account. And we, had done this entire legal process to prove, hey, these are counterfeit products and they are being sold as a FinalStraw, but they are not a FinalStraw. And ultimately, like, eBay just doesn't really care about counterfeit. They do when it comes, I think, to higher priced items. Like, I know that they have some processes in place for like Gucci bags and stuff, but like when it comes to a straw, they were pretty dismissive.
So if you're a smaller brand, either work with the more reciprocal platforms like Shopify and Amazon, or try and get your GEO as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think the GEO is, it really just depends. It was interesting too, because the way the timing went, we'd done so much enforcement up to getting our GEO that like the number of fakes that we were seeing was actually really low by the time we got the GEO. So we got it and we were able to use it, but did it, was it something I would do again? Probably not. It was really expensive. It was like, I think it was like $300,000 to get it. Like, it was incredibly expensive. And then, you have to, it's hard because once you start the process, you don't know, like, if you're going to need it in, I think it took 10 months or something to get it. And so by then, like, we'd done so much enforcement that we were really not seeing as many fakes. And then the GEO comes and then we're just like, "Oh, we have it now. We can continue to use it." But yeah.
Yeah. Would you yeah, possibly not the best strategy if you're a very small brand.
Yeah.
If it's going to cost, I didn't know they were $300,000 up to that amount.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
So moving forward a bit in time, since those early days of combating counterfeiting, how has your IP sort of portfolio developed over time? Where are you now?
Yeah, well, now it's robust. We have a very large portfolio because we filed patents in so many countries. I would actually say we filed in way too many countries to begin with, because of the way that things took off. It wasn't like we were able to kind of gradually build a portfolio. We had to decide in this window of time all of the countries that we wanted to file in, or then you just can't file. And we were like unsure if this was going to be a global phenomenon or, more based in the US and Canada and the EU. So, so we ended up filing in a lot of countries, and that upkeep of the portfolio is a ton of work.
Yeah. Are you still working with the same legal team to sort of help maintain this?
We've actually we've downsized quite a bit. So with COVID, everything just kind of shifted, and we had to reduce the amount of legal expenses because we were, I mean, it's just so expensive to maintain all of the IP.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you also expanded your trademark portfolio over this time as well,
Yeah.
alongside your patents?
So trademarks are, something that if you can, spend a little bit time studying them, you can figure it out yourself. And so trademarks are really nice because they do protect the brand name, and any words that you're using in your marketing that are really specific to your brand, and as well as the logo. And so as we launch new products, we're, immediately launching trademarks requests.
Sure. I'm very aware that we're coming up on time. I'd like to ask you one final question and then see if we have questions from our audience. So my final question to you, Emma, will be, I guess quite briefly, what advice would you give to brands who find themselves now in the situation you were in 2018?
Well, I would say first, breathe. That like rushing into things isn't going to fix them. We did everything we could in that first year and lost approximately $9 million to counterfeits. Yeah, it was unbelievable. So, you're up against a humongous battle, and just take your time in thinking through decisions, because I think I got so overwhelmed. I tried to rush into things, and I don't think that made things better. The next thing is, like raise some money so you can hire a really good legal team. And you kind of have to go hard to start, and then you can start easing off of it.
Okay, fantastic. So to people watching, we have a pretty short Q&A. We have a question in. If you want to submit another question, send it in. Our first one is, Emma, how can customers help in spotting and reporting?
That is such a good question. Well, I think first of all, like, it's where are you purchasing the product? If you are purchasing the product from any site besides the company's website, then you might be purchasing a fraud. And so you can look also on Amazon for verified reseller badges, and make sure that they are being sold by an actual, verified seller. And I think that if the price is too good to be true, it probably is. And so just being aware that, like, if you have to ask, why is this so cheap? There is a reason. There's always a reason. And the answer is probably something you won't like. And, at the end of the day, I think almost everyone has bought a counterfeit before. They are everywhere. And it really is about that slowing down piece of, like, looking at things with a critical eye and saying, okay, do I want to support this small company? And if so, like, go to their website. I know Amazon is so much easier to buy from, but they take a huge chunk of, companies' revenues. And so the best way to support and ensure you're not buying a counterfeit is just to buy directly from the site.
Yeah. Is it worth saving a couple of dollars if it means you are using a product that's not helping the environmental cause and might even put you at risk? It's
right. I mean, we don't know what kind of materials these people were using, in the construction of the straw. Like, they could have lead, and they could have, all kinds of toxic chemicals. And this is something you're putting in your mouth, you're putting in your beverage, you're putting in your children's mouth. Like, it's it's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, it's sinister is the word I keep using very often. We are at time. Emma, I'd like to say a huge thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Ryan. It's really nice to chat.
And to everyone watching, thank you very much for joining. We'll be back very soon with another episode of IP Workshop Live.